The automatic doors hissed open, and for a second, nobody moved. Then he stumbled in. A tall black man, shirt soaked in blood, one hand gripping his left side, the other barely keeping him upright. The white tile beneath him turned red with every shaky step. "Please, I need help," he said, voice hoarse, eyes glassy. At the triage desk, Janet barely blinked. Her blonde bun didn't move an inch as she spoke into the headset. "Do you have insurance, sir? I need your documents first." The man swayed, catching himself on the counter. "I can't breathe. I think I'm gonna—" His knees buckled. From across the hallway, Nurse Ava saw everything. Her stomach dropped. For half a second, her feet didn't move, not because she didn't want to, but because she knew what would happen if she did. It was her third warning. One more violation of hospital policy, and she was out. Fired. Blacklisted. Janet looked back at Ava, eyebrows raised. "Don't even think about it." Ava looked down at the man. A pool of blood now circled his body. His eyes flickered like someone losing light. And suddenly, nothing else mattered. She rushed forward, her sneakers sliding on the blood-slick floor. "Sir? Stay with me, okay? Can you tell me your name?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Just a gurgle and a tremble. "Back away, Ava," Janet snapped. "You're not authorized to touch him without a completed intake form." Ava didn't stop. "He's crashing. He needs a trauma team now." Janet's voice turned sharper. "Ava, that's an order." People in the waiting area were watching now. Some pulled out their phones. Others stood frozen. The air felt thick, like the walls were holding their breath. Ava dropped to her knees beside him and tore open his shirt. Blood surged from a deep gash along his ribs. Arterial. Fast. Dangerous. "He's not paperwork," Ava said, voice rising. "He's dying." "You'll lose your job." "Then let me," she growled, pressing down hard on the wound. "But I'm not letting another black veteran die on this floor because some white lady needs a form filled out." Janet took a step back, her mouth tight, face flushed. Ava shouted down the hallway, "Code Red! Trauma Bay 3! Now!" The veteran's hand found hers for a second, weak but real. "You're okay," Ava whispered. "I got you." Sirens inside the hospital blared as backup arrived, but the damage was already done. To him, to the floor, and to the silence that had covered that ER for years. Ava didn't even flinch when security stepped into view. She just kept her hands locked on his wound, eyes locked on his face, and her voice steady. "You stay awake, soldier. I'm not letting them write your story with a clipboard." 12 years in emergency rooms, and still the sound of someone gasping for life haunted her. Ava Morris wasn't just any nurse. She had earned every scar on her hands and every sleepless night in her eyes. Born in Georgia, raised on military bases, she was the daughter of a black Navy vet who never once complained about his limp, even when no hospital treated it seriously. Her father used to say, "They don't see us the same, Ava, so we gotta see each other." That's why she became a nurse, not for the paycheck, not for the title, but to be the person someone like her dad could count on when it mattered. Now, 34, Ava lived alone in a small apartment 5 minutes from Crestline General. Her fridge was half empty, her scrubs were faded. But her conviction, unshakable. Until 6 months ago, when the new owners turned the hospital into a profit machine. Everything had changed. New policies, new supervisors, new priorities. Nobody gets treated without insurance verification first, not even if they're bleeding. The first time Ava broke that rule, it was for a teenage black boy with a collapsed lung. She got written up. The second time, it was for a pregnant Latina woman doubled over in pain. Another warning. One more, they told her, and she'd be gone. Since then, Ava had been walking a tightrope. Not because she'd stopped caring, but because she knew how fast hospitals could erase people like her. But that morning, something felt off. She couldn't explain it. Just a heaviness in her chest she couldn't shake. In the locker room, she stared at herself in the mirror. Her curls pulled tight. Eyes tired. Heart louder than usual. "God," she whispered, "please don't let me freeze when it counts." Janet had been on shift too, her so-called supervisor. Blonde, polished, and quick to correct Ava in front of others. Not just about policy, but tone, posture, attitude. "You look upset, Ava. Is that how we speak to patients?" Patients? Janet had once refused to admit a homeless black man in cardiac arrest because he didn't have ID. That night, Ava had stayed 2 hours after her shift to sit beside that man, just so he wouldn't die alone. The system was broken. Everyone knew it, but no one wanted to lose their job trying to fix it. As Ava walked past the reception desk that night, clipboard in hand, she noticed the old army medal on her keychain, her father's Purple Heart. It clinked quietly, a silent reminder. She tucked it into her pocket, took a breath, and stepped into the chaos of another ER night, not knowing that tonight, that medal would matter more than it ever had before. The sliding doors opened again. Only this time the chaos didn't walk in. It bled in. He was tall, maybe mid-40s, built like a soldier, but swaying like a man fighting gravity. His skin, a rich dark brown, was pale with blood loss. His gray hoodie clung to his side, soaked through with deep crimson. One hand pressed against his ribs. The other reached out for balance. Janet was already at the desk, holding a tablet. "Sir, you need to head to registration first. Do you have your insurance card?" The man blinked like he hadn't heard her. He tried to speak. His lips moved. But the only sound was his body collapsing. He hit the floor hard. Ava dropped the vitals she was logging. Her body moved before her brain did. She reached him in seconds, knees slamming the tile. She ripped off his hoodie, and what she saw stopped her breath. A deep, clean gash along his rib cage, sharp, almost surgical. But it wasn't the wound that hit her hardest. It was the thing tucked into his chain. A dog tag. Her chest tightened. "He's bleeding out!" Ava shouted, waving to the hallway. "I need a crash cart!" Janet stepped forward, eyes wide. "Ava, no. He hasn't registered. That's policy." Ava's gloves were already on. "He's a veteran. He has a right to emergency care. We still need insurance info before trauma care." Ava didn't let her finish. "He's going into shock. You want me to stand here and ask him for Blue Cross or Blue Shield while he bleeds to death?" Janet's voice sharpened. "You're on final warning. Touch him, and you're done." People in the waiting area had stood up. Phones were recording, whispering, watching. Ava looked down at the man. His eyes fluttered open for a split second. "Please," he whispered. "Don't let me die here." She looked back at Janet, then at the guard slowly walking toward her. And then she snapped. "I don't care what the policy says. This man wore a uniform before I wore this badge. And if saving a black veteran costs me my job, then so be it." She pressed her hand hard against the gash, blood seeping through her fingers. Trauma Bay 3! Now! She yelled toward the nurse's station. Code Red! Security! Janet yelled. She's violating protocol. But Ava didn't even blink. A gurney rolled in. A young intern rushed over. What happened? Possible arterial slice. He's crashing, Ava said fast. Hold this pressure. I'm not letting him code. As they lifted the man onto the stretcher, Ava held his hand. You're gonna make it, she whispered. He blinked once, slow and grateful, and then he passed out cold. The trauma bay was chaos wrapped in silence. Dr. Lee, the attending, rushed in moments after the stretcher hit the floor. Ava didn't wait for permission. She started rattling off vitals before he could even ask. Laceration. Lower left quadrant, 4 inches minimum. Arterial. BP crashing. Thready pulse. No allergy tag. ID dog tag, says Marcus King. Dr. Lee's eyes flicked to her, surprised. You initiated trauma response? I did, Ava said, hands still coated in blood. I had to. Dr. Lee didn't argue. He turned to the intern. Get Oneg ready. Prepare for trauma surgery. Let's not lose this one. The team moved in sync. 4 lines. Oxygen mask. Monitors screaming warnings. Amid the blur, Ava noticed something. Marcus had a scar across his left shoulder. Bullet wound. Old. She knew the shape. Military issue. And then it hit her. Marcus King wasn't just a veteran. He was a soldier who'd seen war up close. A man who made it through battlefields just to almost die in a lobby. You're not dying here, she whispered to him again. Not in this place. By the time surgery began, Ava stepped back, her hands finally still. Her gloves were heavy with blood, but her heart even heavier. Outside the trauma bay, Janet was waiting, clipboard in hand, face tight with fury. You'll answer for this, she snapped. Violation of emergency protocol. No insurance verification. No intake forms. You dragged him in like you owned the place. He was bleeding out, Ava replied, her voice low. That's all I needed to know. You just signed your own termination. I've already called Robert Chen. You'll be hearing from HR in the morning. Ava didn't flinch. Good. Let them come find me. Janet scoffed and walked off, her heels echoing down the hallway. Ava stood alone for a moment, watching the red smear trail where the gurney had rolled. Her chest felt like it was being pressed by 100 regrets. But then the elevator door opened and someone stepped out. A hospital clerk, holding a chart. Ava, he said, confused. Was that Marcus King? She looked up. You know him? Everyone in the local VFW knows that name. 3 tours. Afghanistan, Bronze Star, Purple Heart. He's kind of a legend. Ava's breath caught in her throat. She hadn't saved just any man. She had saved a hero, and the hospital was about to fire her for it. She looked at the floor one more time, blood fading into tile. But something else was coming. Something bigger. And deep down, she could feel it in her bones. By morning, the story had already started leaking, not to the press, but to the people who mattered most. Nurses whispered near vending machines. Technicians passed each other glances in hallways. Someone had recorded Ava on the floor, blood on her gloves, shouting for trauma care while security lingered behind her. The video was spreading fast. But Ava! She sat alone in the staff lounge, staring at her suspension notice. Robert Chen, the hospital administrator, had delivered it coldly just an hour earlier. You acted outside protocol. This will be reviewed at the board level. Expect a formal termination hearing. Ava didn't argue. She didn't beg. She just nodded, stood up, and walked out of his office without a word. But others were speaking for her. A young black intern named Jordan slipped into the lounge and handed her a napkin. Inside it, a number. "She's a journalist," he whispered. "Local. Real one. If anyone should tell your side, it's her." Ava didn't say anything, but she pocketed the number. Across town, a different kind of conversation was happening. In a quiet living room, 1,000 miles from the battlefield, but just a few steps from the fire. Captain Maya King, U.S. Marines, daughter of Marcus King, had just landed from overseas when the hospital called. She listened, didn't interrupt, then hung up the phone, grabbed her keys, and said only one thing: "Not today." By noon, the media got wind of what happened. The headline practically wrote itself. "Black veteran nearly dies in ER, while nurse fights to save him. Hospital suspends her." The comments section exploded. He wore the uniform, but they still made him wait? She's a hero, not a rule breaker. This is how America repays its soldiers? Veteran groups started tagging each other. Then Marine pages picked it up. Then someone posted Ava's video, not just the fall, not just the blood, but her voice, steady, clear, defiant. "He's not paperwork. He's dying." The clip racked up 100,000 views in 6 hours. By sundown, the hospital lobby started feeling different. First, 2 Marines walked in, dress blues, standing by the entrance. Then 6 more. Then 10. Then 20. No signs, no shouting, just presence. Patients watched in stunned silence. Visitors took photos. Staff whispered, "Who called them?" Ava stood behind the glass, watching the uniforms stack like a wall of dignity. She hadn't asked for this. But the people who believed in what she did? They were done being quiet. And this hospital, this cold, profit-chasing machine, was about to understand the weight of real honor. The next morning, Ava walked into chaos she didn't recognize. Not medical chaos, political. Crestline General's polished floors had turned into a pressure cooker. Cameras lined the entrance. Reporters paced the sidewalk. Inside, 35 Marines stood in formation, backs straight, medals gleaming. Every one of them had come for one reason: Ava Morris. At the front of the group stood Captain Maya King, Marcus King's daughter. A force of nature in dress blues, calm, controlled, lethal with just her presence. Ava hadn't spoken to her yet. But now, Maya looked her dead in the eyes, nodded once, and said into the cameras, "We're here to honor the woman who saved my father's life, when this hospital refused to." You could have heard a pin drop. A few feet away, Administrator Robert Chen straightened his tie, sweat crawling down his temple. His plan was falling apart, and everyone could see it. He stepped to the podium, voice tight. "We understand emotions are high, but hospital protocol exists for the safety of all." Maya cut him off without raising her voice. "Sir, your protocol nearly killed a decorated Marine." She stepped aside, and Marcus King appeared, walking slowly, stitched up, supported by a cane, but alive. Every camera turned. People gasped. The man who had bled across their lobby was now standing inside it. He took the mic with a raspy voice, but steady hand. "I served 3 tours for this country. he said, eyes fixed on Chen. But I was almost buried 3 blocks from here, not by a bullet, but by a clipboard. He turned to Ava. This woman didn't ask for a thank you. She didn't even know who I was. She just saw a black man in pain, and helped. That's the kind of soldier I'd want beside me in combat. The crowd erupted. Nurses clapped. Even doctors who had kept quiet now stepped forward. Ava's eyes welled, but she didn't cry. Not yet. That came later, when Chen tried one last time to pull her aside, away from the cameras, into a quiet hallway. We can discuss reinstatement, privately. But Ava stood her ground. No, she said. Say it here. Say it where every black nurse, every veteran, every patient can hear you. Chen faltered. He looked over his shoulder. Dr. Patricia Hall, chairwoman of the board, and a retired Navy surgeon, had arrived moments earlier. She took the mic. Effective immediately, she said clearly. Crestline General is suspending its intake policy for critical patients. Ava Morris is reinstated, promoted to trauma lead, and issued a formal public apology from this hospital. A full beat of silence. Then the lobby exploded, in cheers, in clapping, in something hospitals rarely hear anymore. Justice echoing off the walls. Ava didn't smile. Not yet. She walked up to Marcus, held out her hand. He shook it. You didn't just save me, he whispered. You saved something bigger. And Ava, now standing taller than ever, finally exhaled. It wasn't over, but it had begun. Weeks later, the hospital walls didn't feel the same. People walked slower, softer. They looked each other in the eye more. The intake policy, the one that nearly killed Marcus, was gone, replaced by a new directive named after the woman who stood when others froze. They called it the Ava Protocol. It stated clearly, if life is at risk, save it first. Paperwork comes second. Ava never asked for the name. She never even attended the board meeting where it passed. She was too busy, working double shifts, training young nurses, sitting with scared patients who now whispered, "You're the one who saved that soldier, right?" But the biggest change wasn't in the hospital. It was in who walked through the door. Veterans, especially black veterans, some in uniforms, some in wheelchairs, some who had never trusted hospitals before. They showed up with quiet eyes and strong handshakes. I heard what you did, one of them said, so I came here. Outside, protest signs faded. Reporters moved on, but something stayed behind. Something Ava could feel every time she walked past Trauma Bay 3. They had cleaned the blood, scrubbed the tiles, repainted the walls. But people remembered. That space had become sacred ground. And then, one afternoon, the staff gathered for what they thought was a quick ceremony. Instead, they got a moment no one would forget. Dr. Patricia Hall stepped up to the podium flanked by Marines. Her voice was calm but heavy. Today, she said, we officially rename this room in honor of a man who survived the battlefield and nearly died in a lobby. The curtain pulled back. The Marcus King Emergency Suite. Ava stood beside him as they unveiled the sign. His hand trembled slightly as he traced the letters. He leaned close to her. You know they almost forgot about me. They didn't, she whispered. Not anymore. Later that day, Ava sat alone for a minute. Just 1 minute. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her father's dog tag, the one she carried every shift. She held it tight. Her father had always said, "Stand when it matters, even if your knees shake." And she had. She had stood. Against paperwork. Against silence. Against a system that never saw the blood unless it stained the carpet. And now? Now she led a team of nurses who didn't flinch when trauma rolled in. She taught them to see people, not charts. She taught them that rules are only good if they serve justice. And as the sun dipped behind the glass, casting a golden hue across the hospital lobby, Ava finally allowed herself to breathe. The war wasn't over. But for once, the right side had won. And in the room that almost buried a hero, life began again, one heartbeat at a time.